Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Tonight, I've got 3 disturbing trucker horror stories based on real accounts. I think you're really going to enjoy these. If you do, make sure to drop a like on the video and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I always love seeing that. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I share stories like this all the time. A big shout out to my top subscriber of the week, Becca's Random Videos. Thanks for the support. Alright, let's dive straight into tonight's chilling tales. I've been a trucker for close to 15 years now. This happened to me in 2017. I was driving an overnight haul through the Mojave Desert in California, headed for a destination in Arizona. I think I was delivering appliances. I don't really remember. It was pitch black, darkness in every direction. The headlights on my semi were really dim at the time, and I'd been putting off getting them fixed. Usually it didn't matter, but out there alone, it became obvious. I had to strain my eyes to see the road. I debated pulling over and waiting for sunrise, but I needed the money and didn't want to lose hours, so I kept going. Around an hour before sunrise, something suddenly appeared in the distance. Worried it was an animal, I slammed the brakes. My truck screeched to a stop, just a foot away from a car, sitting dead center on the double yellow. Hazards flashing, passenger door wide open. I'm not the type to scare easy. I figured someone needed help, so I reversed and pulled over. No cars around for miles. Warm night, no wind, almost silent except for the clicking of the hazards. I approached and realized the car was empty, completely empty, backseat included. Now I felt uneasy. I checked the trunk. It was tied shut with rope. I used the key from the ignition to unlock it, but it still wouldn't open. So I tried from the back seat and finally got it. 3 squishy garbage bags. Before I touched one, the loudest gunshot I've ever heard blasted through the night. I hit my head on the roof, threw the keys inside and ran. As I climbed into my semi, a voice screamed, "H-E-Y," from somewhere in the dark. I started the truck, engine stalling once from panic, and that's when he stepped into the headlights. Short, husky guy. Red hair, overalls, shin-high boots, shovel in one hand, an old hunting rifle in the other. He didn't look crazy. He looked worried. He shouted, "Wait," as I drove past him, waving frantically. No chance. I floored it. 5 minutes later, headlights started gaining behind me. He honked nonstop, stayed right on my tail. I called the cops. After 15 minutes, he cut in front of me and brake-checked me. And then, finally, flashing police lights appeared ahead. His car veered off into the desert and vanished. The cop didn't chase him, just took a report and sent me away. I never got an update. People always assumed the bags were bodies, but they were too small. Maybe animals, maybe something else. I'll never know, but I've never liked desert runs since. I've been driving trucks for a long time now, and I've seen my share of strange things on the road. Most truckers have a few stories they keep to themselves until they know you well enough to tell them. This is the one story I never planned to tell anyone, because even after all these years, I still don't understand what I saw. It happened in 2019, while I was hauling a load from Barstow, California to Amarillo, Texas. Long dry stretch, nothing but open land, and that feeling you get when you're too far from anything familiar. I had started the haul around 7 p.m., planning to drive through most of the night, since the route was simple and the weather was on my side. I've always preferred night driving anyway. Less traffic, cooler air, fewer distractions. I was driving an old Freightliner Cascadia at the time. Solid truck. Not perfect, but reliable in the ways that matter. Everything was normal until around 1:30 a.m. I was somewhere between Kingman and Seligman, heading east. That stretch of highway gets empty after midnight. You can go 10, 15 minutes without seeing another pair of headlights. The darkness feels thicker there, almost like the sky sinks a little lower without the city lights. I remember glancing at the clock and thinking I'd push another hour before stopping for coffee. The road was calm, the truck was humming along, and I wasn't feeling tired. Then I noticed something ahead of me on the median. At first I thought it was one of those broken signs they stack before repair crews come through. But as I got closer, I realized it was a person. He was walking straight down the center of the median, like it was a sidewalk. Not crossing, not drifting, just staying right in the middle. Tall guy, maybe 6'4" or taller. Skinny. No backpack, no reflective gear, no flashlight. Just a long, dark coat that reached below his knees. Too warm for a coat like that, even at night. I slowed down a little, mostly out of caution. You don't want to blow past someone that close without giving yourself time to react. As I passed him, I got a better look. He wasn't hitchhiking. He wasn't waving. He was staring straight ahead, hands at his sides, walking at the same steady pace, like he didn't even notice my truck. I passed him in a few seconds, but those few seconds stuck with me. Something about the way he moved didn't sit right. He didn't walk like someone who'd been on the road a long time. His steps were too even. No limp, no slouch, no sign he was tired. It was almost like he was following a line that only he could see. I checked my driver's side mirror after passing. He was still there in the mirror's edge, walking in that same controlled way. The coat didn't move much, even with the wind from my truck. I chalked it up to some drifter or someone who'd had car trouble. People behave strangely out there sometimes. But 20 minutes later, I saw him again. This time I wasn't anywhere close to where I'd seen him before. I had covered at least 15 miles. The terrain had changed too. Wider median, lower brush. But there he was. Same tall figure. Same long dark coat. Same steady walk. Same direction. I slowed down much more this time. I looked for vehicles on the shoulder. Nothing. I scanned the area for any sign he could have walked that far on foot. It didn't make sense. Even a fast walker can't cover 15 miles in 20 minutes. When I passed him again, I paid closer attention. He never looked up, never changed his pace. Just walked like he had a destination that didn't involve anyone else. This time, when I checked the mirror, he wasn't in it for long. He faded out of view faster than he should have. I don't mean he vanished. I mean he moved out of the mirror's angle quicker than physics should have allowed. The mirror covers a good stretch behind me, and he shouldn't have disappeared until I'd gone much farther. I felt uneasy after that. I told myself it was a coincidence, that maybe the first person wasn't the same one as the second. But deep down, I didn't buy it. Around 30 minutes later, I reached a small rest area. Just a basic pull-off with a couple trash cans and a single-stall bathroom. I wasn't planning to stop, but I needed a minute to settle my nerves. I parked the truck, turned on the hazards, and stepped out to stretch. The night air felt heavy. I don't know how else to describe it. Just thick, like you could feel the emptiness pressing down on you. I walked a few steps toward the restroom, but something stopped me. I looked toward the road, and that's when I saw him again. He was farther away this time, maybe 50 yards down the median, but it was the same figure. Same coat, same slow, steady walk. I stood there for a long minute, just watching him. He didn't turn his head or react to my truck's lights. He just kept that same pace. What shook me wasn't just that he was there. It was that he never looked tired. He never slowed down. And somehow, despite how far I traveled, he always ended up right near me. I thought about calling highway patrol, but I hesitated. What was I going to say? There's a guy walking in the median, and I've seen him too many times. It didn't sound like something they'd take seriously. Plus, I wasn't sure what I had seen. I decided not to use the restroom and climbed back into the truck. I locked the doors out of habit. I sat there a minute, hands on the wheel, tried to figure out if I should keep driving or wait it out. Eventually, I put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the road. The next 2 hours were the longest of that night. I kept glancing into my mirrors every couple of minutes, half expecting him to appear again. I didn't see him for a while, and I started thinking maybe the fatigue had been messing with my head. Then around 4 a.m., near Ash Fork, I saw him again. This time he wasn't on the median. He was on the shoulder, walking in the same direction as traffic. I was the only vehicle on the road, and the sight of that figure in my headlights hit me harder than I expected. He was closer to the truck now, almost near my lane. I moved a little to the left to give him more room, even though he wasn't stepping into the road. As I passed, he slowly turned his head toward the truck. Not quickly, not dramatically, just slow enough that it made my stomach drop. I didn't get a clear look at his face. I just saw pale skin and dark shadows where his eyes should have been. That's all it took for fear to settle in my chest. When I looked in the mirror, he wasn't there. I hit the brakes just enough to confirm I wasn't imagining it. I looked again. The shoulder was empty. I had passed him only seconds before. I sped up again and didn't slow down for anything after that. The last sighting happened near Williams, about 20 minutes before sunrise. The sky was just starting to lighten, and I could finally see the landscape instead of just what my headlights allowed. I was exhausted and irritated with myself for letting my nerves get to me so badly. And then I saw him one last time. He was standing still this time, not walking, just standing in the median, facing the road, facing me. But this time the sun was barely coming up, so I could actually see him clearly. Same height, same coat, but his stance was different. He stood perfectly straight, arms at his sides, head tilted just enough that it looked unnatural. I drove past without slowing. I didn't dare look in the mirror. I didn't want to see if he was watching. That was the last time I ever saw him. When I reached Amarillo later that morning, I sat in the truck for a long while before going inside to check in. My hands were still shaking. I'm not the type who scares easily, but something about that man, it felt wrong. Not supernatural in the movie sense, just wrong in a way the brain doesn't know how to categorize. I've driven that route dozens of times since then. Never saw him again. But every time I pass those stretches of empty median, I catch myself looking twice. Part of me thinks he was just a strange drifter with an unbelievable amount of stamina. But another part of me, the part that hates silence at night now, knows that there was something off about him in a way I can't explain. I still don't know who he was, or how he kept getting ahead of me, or why he seemed to always be right there when I slowed down. And honestly, I'm not sure I ever want to know. I'm sure you've seen those younger truckers online filming their daily routines. I'm on the younger side too, so my feeds are full of that stuff. I had to drop out of a good university, so people always tell me I could have done more with my life. But trucking isn't bad. The only hard part is the isolation. It gets in your head. This happened 3 months into my first job. I was driving from southern New Jersey to Lafayette, Indiana, a 12-hour trip right after finishing an 8-hour one. I wanted to knock everything out fast, so I drove through the night. Halfway through, I reached for a Red Bull and realized I'd forgotten to restock. I hate stopping. Even sitting still for 20 seconds makes me groggy. but I had no choice. I pulled into what I thought was a rest stop. It wasn't. It looked like an abandoned gas station with a repurposed convenience store. Another store was farther up, so I planned to go there instead. Still, I checked the abandoned one first. The door opened into pure darkness. Strange. Inside, a faint glow came from a back room. Curiosity won. I walked toward it and found a refrigerator plugged in. When I opened it, completely empty. Shelves removed. As I closed it, I heard something clatter out in the main room. I froze. Went back out. Nothing. I left quickly. Outside, the entrance door, which I was sure I closed, was now open. I jogged to the other store, bought a drink, and got back in my truck fast. Something felt wrong. I got back on the road, caffeine kicking in, and tried to shake it off. Then I noticed movement behind me. The curtain in the cab shifted. No AC on, no wind. My stomach sank. Someone was in the truck. I didn't look back. I quietly entered the nearest police station into my GPS. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I kept imagining someone lunging at me. I stopped right in front of the station and ran inside. Police swarmed the truck. Inside, they found 3 homeless people, 2 men and a woman, wrapped in dirty blankets. One guy had 2 switchblades. None of them said a word. They just stared at me the whole time. I never figured out what they planned to do, or how long they'd been in there. I wasn't scheduled for a night run, but my dispatcher called me around 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Apparently, another driver had bailed last minute, and they needed someone to pick up a refrigerated load of produce from Bakersfield to Phoenix. It wasn't far, just under 500 miles, but it would be an overnight haul, and I was tired after a long day of waiting at the terminal. Still, I agreed. The pay was decent, and I needed the hours. I arrived at the Bakersfield warehouse around 9 p.m. The place was mostly empty. Just a few forklifts moving pallets, and a couple of night workers loading trailers. I checked the paperwork and started inspecting my truck. Everything was fine. Tires, lights, brakes, cargo secure. I pulled out onto Highway 58 heading east, the desert stretching ahead like a flat, black sheet under the faint glow of my headlights. The first few hours were uneventful. I kept my speed steady, following the posted limits, and sipped coffee to stay awake. Around 1 a.m., I passed a rest stop that was completely deserted. The only thing that caught my eye was a figure standing near the edge of the lot, just beyond the lights, looking like they were waiting. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, but I dismissed it as a tired traveler. I've seen people in weird spots along highways before. About 30 minutes later, I noticed a pair of headlights following me. That's not unusual at night. Sometimes another truck just keeps pace for miles. But these headlights weren't moving like a normal vehicle. They stayed about a quarter mile back, keeping exact distance, even when I slowed down slightly. I glanced at my mirrors several times. The road was empty otherwise. I thought maybe it was another trucker who was tired and following too close, so I slowed a bit to see if they would pass. They didn't. At some point, I realized I hadn't seen a plate. Not even a state tag. Just the beams of the headlights in my mirrors. That made my stomach knot. I started to push the truck a little faster, but the headlights mirrored every move I made. I wasn't speeding excessively, just a little over the limit, but the way those lights followed felt deliberate. I reached a stretch of the highway where the shoulder was soft sand and the desert seemed endless. I saw a small turnout ahead and decided to pull over, thinking maybe the truck behind me would pass. As I slowed, the headlights suddenly veered off the road. At first, I was relieved, but then I noticed them parked in the desert about 50 feet away, angled toward me. Whoever, or whatever, was in that vehicle wasn't going anywhere. I debated calling the police, but I didn't want to make a scene. I had my CB radio and tried to reach other truckers, but the channel was dead. I watched them sit there for at least 10 minutes before I started driving again. Once I moved, the lights followed, slowly this time, keeping me in sight. I had to make it to Kingman before I could rest safely, and the thought of stopping anywhere in that stretch made me nervous. Around 3 a.m., I reached a gas station on the outskirts of Kingman. I parked near the pumps, hoping they would pass, but I didn't see any vehicle. I got out to stretch and saw a figure walking along the station's perimeter, just barely visible in the dim light. It didn't move like a normal person. It just glided along the edge of the building, head down, and stopped suddenly when I looked directly at it. I got back in my truck, locked the doors, and waited for daylight. I called my dispatcher and explained I might be delayed. They didn't ask many questions, just told me to get some rest. I didn't sleep much, just kept the engine on and stared at the road. When dawn came, I drove off slowly, keeping an eye on the highway. Nothing followed me after daylight, and I didn't see the figure again. I never reported it to the police, mostly because I couldn't explain what I saw. The whole thing didn't make sense. Headlights with no plates, a figure that didn't act human, someone, or something, tracking me for hours. I've driven this route countless times before and after, but I never saw anything like that again. Even now, when I drive at night through empty stretches of desert, I can't shake the memory of those headlights and that gliding figure. I've tried to rationalize it as another trucker, a hitchhiker, a trick of the dark, but I know what I saw. Whatever it was, it knew I was alone, and it wanted me to notice it. That night, I realized the highway can be just as dangerous as any storm or mechanical failure. Sometimes, it's what you can't explain that's the real threat. My name is Kevin. I've been trucking for 15 years, bouncing between different companies. I push myself more than I should. Sleep gets sacrificed a lot. 4 years ago, I was working out of North Dakota. Flat roads, easy driving, long hours. It was a cold Tuesday morning in May. I had a load to take into Montana and wanted to knock it out in one go. No breaks, no sleep. I left after lunch and expected to arrive just after midnight. Around midnight, I could barely keep my eyes open. I used smelling salts, a trick a buddy taught me. It kept me alert for a while, but half an hour later I drifted onto the shoulder and snapped awake. I had to pull over, but there was nowhere to do it, just woods on both sides. I slowed down, with the truck going slower. The headlights lit up more of the road. That's when I saw it. A purple dress lying in the middle of the lane. I thought I was hallucinating from fatigue, but it was real. I rolled past it, confused. A few hundred yards later, I passed a pair of shoes. Now I was freaked out. Then more clothing. Kids' clothing. Enough that I finally stopped. The cold air hit me when I stepped out. I checked the pile. Definitely children's clothes. Both boys and girls. I looked into the woods, but couldn't see anything. I kept turning around, expecting someone to be behind me. Something felt wrong. Then I heard a crunch in the woods on my left. 30 seconds later, another crunch on the right. I ran back to the truck. Just before I shut the door, a child screamed. I froze. My heart was pounding. Another scream. Same tone, same pitch, same sound. Instinct took over. I turned the truck and pointed the headlights directly into the woods. About 30 yards in, I saw them. 3 or 4 people. One holding a huge speaker. They ducked behind trees when the light hit them, but not fast enough. They were playing recordings of kids screaming, trying to lure me into the woods. Before I could react, something slammed against the truck from the other side. Someone had thrown something. Then another person ran out of the dark, and threw something that cracked a passenger window. I floored it. I didn't slow down once during the final hour of the drive, delivered my load, slept 10 hours straight, and called the police afterward. They said they'd investigate. Never heard back. I don't know what those people wanted, but I know what would have happened if I walked into those trees.